If you go online to find out how to play Demon Souls, you're going to get a lot of pretty bad advice, in my opinion. I think this is mostly because there's very well-meaning people who are basically experts at the game, and they don't really appreciate how basic of information you probably need. They just give you way too advanced techniques. So this video is meant to be for the true beginner. They'll often say you should pick royalty as your starting class because magic is really overpowered in Demon Souls, and it'll just be a cakewalk if you use someone who can use magic. And royalty starts with this ring where you can recharge your mana. Now, I think that if you're a beginner, you're going to want a lot of latitude to make mistakes. You're going to want to be able to get hit a lot, so pick a character like the Knight, who has good armor and lots of hit points. That's just going to make things way easier on you. Let me try to show you what I mean. So the Knight starts out with a good shield, a decent sword, a fluted helm, armor, greaves, gauntlets, for a total armor stat over there on the right of 106. Alright, let's see how many hits a brand new Knight can take before they die. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My health is up in the top left. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. 15 hits. Let's check out the Royal. Got kind of a crappy shield, a crown, and some cloth armor. Pretty decent ring though, it recharges mana, for a total armor stat of 72. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's less than half. I mean, that's what's going to make this game easier, that you can get hit a whole bunch and not die so easily. You can make more mistakes. Now, it's true that magic is pretty strong in this game, and if you're a royal, you start with a ring that recharges your mana, but it recharges way too slow. You're going to run out of mana right at the start of the level, and you're just going to be waving your wand around like an idiot with no spells coming out, and you're not going to have learned how to play the game properly. So I really don't recommend doing a royalty. That's a more advanced playstyle. Alright, let's learn how to play this game. First of all, you need to lock on to all your enemies. You click in the right joystick, and a little white dot appears. That will keep you facing the enemy. If you unlock and you try to back away, you'll literally turn around and get stabbed in the back and stuff. That's not going to work out. So click in, and no matter where you move, you're always going to be facing the enemy. You can use the right joystick to switch between the enemies. And if you kill one of them, it'll automatically lock on to the next one. Pretty spiffy. Alright, so here's the really important stuff. I'm going to lock on, I'm going to hold my shield up, always, and he can't get me. I'm always going to be facing him, I'm always going to block. Now, Demon Souls is all about stamina management. Stamina is that green bar up in the top left. You use stamina for everything. Rolling, blocking, attacking, everything. So, you have to have stamina in order to avoid damage, right? Either to roll out of the way or to use your shield and block. You also need to use stamina to deal damage by swinging your weapon. So that's basically the dance of the game, is do I have enough stamina to attack them to get rid of their health? And do I have enough stamina to get out of the way or block their attack? Now, you're going to notice that this enemy is pretty easy. He just hits, there's an opening. He hits, there's an opening. I'm just going to notice this, and then I'm going to attack when there's an opening. Alright, it took away most of his health. I could probably get him in one more hit. I'm just going to make sure I have enough stamina. I have plenty. I'm going to hit him again. And that's that. That's pretty much how this whole game goes. You can easily get into trouble, though, if you rush in and there's way too many enemies around. This is a problem just as in terms of crowd management, keeping them all on the right side of my shield, but also because they're going to drain my stamina a lot more. And I might be thinking in this situation, man, when am I going to get a swing in? If I swing, I'm not going to have any stamina left, and then they're going to get me. And that's right, that's the trouble. If I get a bit aggressive and I swing my sword here, I'll be out of stamina. Bing, and I get hit. Okay, get out of there. Use a healing item or something. The way you deal with this is if you look for a collective opening, like right now, and go from there. But you still have to be careful. If you're too aggressive, that probably won't work out too well for you. You always have to be careful. So that's something to keep in mind is avoid groups of enemies anytime you can. If you can ever lure out one enemy or pick enemies off one by one, that's vastly preferable to facing multiple at the same time. I'm trying to do that right here. It's not very realistic, but I'm just trying to get the attention of one of them. There we go. And he's coming out. I'm gonna, in this case, just circle around his shield instead of try to overpower him and get him from the back. I'm gonna swing wildly and use all my stamina. Bing. And I didn't have enough to block him. So you can also learn other techniques like parrying, which is using L2 right when they hit you, which is a great move and it's advanced and you're probably not going to be able to do it and it's going to frustrate you. I just wouldn't get too concerned about that right now. The interesting part of the game is when you come across an enemy who throws a wrench into the mix. What if they hit hard or mess up your shield? What am I going to do then? And that's part of the fun of the game is, how am I going to stop this guy? In this case, circle around. That works pretty good against this relatively slow enemy. And you'll fight them in different compromising situations. I got an arrow coming at me. And you'll notice that the enemies have the same stats you do. They have armor, mana, hit points, stamina. Some of them can even use healing items, which might not seem very fair. I think it's fair. That's a good time to rush in and go hit them. So that's part of the game is how do these enemies work and how am I going to improvise and work this out? There's another part of this first level I want to show because I think it illustrates an important dynamic of the game and kind of the mindset you should get in. I'm on this bridge. I'm starting to get some alarm bells going off seeing this dragon. Okay, I need to leave. Well, that's nice of the dragon to take care of all those enemies, but I'm trying to get across this bridge so I can open the gate to the boss of the level. And it's going to become obvious that you cannot go that way. You will die instantly. Oh, what am I supposed to do? Well, in leading up to this point, the level's pretty linear, except for there's two ways to go right here. A game like Assassin's Creed is going to go, quest update, find a way around the bridge, and then it just gives you a waypoint. You might even just push triangle and it takes you to the waypoint. This game goes, well, I don't know, explore, go the other way, see what's there. So you run down this, okay, there's another dragon's facing away, and a bunch of items up there. One of them's actually a pretty good shield, by the way. And you might start to want, oh, I'm starting to understand why there's so many corpses here. Gotta get away from this fire. And so you might start to be frustrated, man, this dragon stops me from everything. But then you also notice, wait, if the dragon's here, it's not guarding that bridge. I gotta book it over there. So if you take a little stroll over there, you're not going to be fast enough. But if you run, you don't have to be lightning fast, but if you run back over there, you'll beat the dragon and make it across the bridge. So, this isn't rocket science. This isn't a particularly complicated problem. But that's just kind of what this game expects of you. That's what people mean when they say the game doesn't hold your hand. So I get across the bridge and not a moment too soon. For the rest of the video, I just wanted to point out two items that I would really, really recommend getting and making a priority. The first one's pretty easy to get. It's in the first level. It's about a third of the way through. You find this tower, you can go down and you open a gate to a shortcut. That way if you die, you can just come through this open gate instead of going through a large part of the level again. Inside the gates, there's a corpse with an item, the cling ring. I use this pretty much the entire game. What it does is, if you're dead, instead of having half health, you have 3/4 health. You can see where I had half health before, and now it's letting me have 3/4 health. So that's extremely useful. The other item is a bit more tricky to get. It's a good weapon that's going to do about twice as much as your current weapon does, and it scales, which means if you put points into certain stats, then the weapon itself will get stronger. So it will work for a lot of the game if you really want it to. The trick is, though, that it's in this level that is a little advanced for you right now. But you could do it. There's about 6 enemies you need to get past. 5 of them are these skeletons, one's an archer. And so you just kind of need to find a way to get through this. These skeletons will come rolling at you. They're a lot more aggressive than the enemies you saw before. But still, circle around them, get some hits in, back off. The good technique is to drop your shield for half a second while you're backing away, so your stamina recharges faster. You'll be able to get them eventually. So you see this burning tree up on the cliff behind it. There's an item. That's what we're going for. That's the sword. So we basically need to go up and around, and there's a few enemies on the way that I'll just skip that part. So you climb up the stairs after you take out the enemies. There's a couple archers. If you keep moving, they won't get you. So you go through the fog gate, and then you're going to want to turn immediately left. And that guy looks familiar. You're going to want your shield up because there's a trap on the ground. And you're going to turn left again. Now there's going to be an enemy here who, don't try to fight it, it's way too hard. He's going to lunge at you. Now don't lock on, because you don't want the camera to spin around when he passes you, and roll right when he jumps at you. And then just run and go get that sword. Thank me later. There's also a good sword in the tunnels of the next level, or of level 2-2. So I could make a video 10 times this long, but I think you just really need to focus on those basics. The stamina, the dance of combat, and you'll get it. You really will get it, and you'll find that this game, you'll understand why so many people love this game and love this series.
Alright, so this is part 2 of how to play Demon Souls for the true beginner. It's just going to explain the basics. The last video covered how it's about stamina management. You should lock on, use your shield, look for an opening to attack. This video I'm going to talk about 4 main combat styles, including rolling and parrying, and also about stats. My guess is you will find that part of the video pretty interesting and educational, or extremely boring. So I guess we'll see. Alright, the most easy way to play is to be at a distance and just shoot magic at guys. Why is that easy? Well, magic uses no stamina, since you're not close. There's no risk. Yeah, that's pretty easy. There's a pretty big asterisk to that, though, which is you have a limited amount of mana, and you might spend a lot of time waiting for mana to recharge. That's probably not going to be very fun. And you're also not going to learn how to play properly if that's how you approach this whole game. That's actually what I did the first time I played many years ago. I just used magic like this because I was like, yeah, I feel safe, this feels great. But I didn't really know how to fight, and when magic didn't work in certain situations, I sucked. So magic works great, but there's a pretty big caveat there, that you still need to learn how to use a sword and shield. Now, using a sword and shield requires a little bit more from you, because you have to notice your enemy's attack patterns. When do they attack? When is there an opening that I can get them back? So you can just hide behind your shield, and then when there's an opening, you attack back. What if they have a really aggressive combat style and they mess up your shield? Well, they might be able to get at you, and that's where the next style of combat comes in, which is rolling. So with rolling, you're going to need to notice their attack patterns and get out of the way. Yeah, it's a little bit more tricky. So I'm going to use my shield a little bit as well. I've got to notice when he's attacking and roll out of the way of it. Some attacks are pretty quick, some are slow. Now what happens is enemies don't just suddenly attack, though sometimes they do, like that kick. They kind of wind up a little bit. They show you they're going to attack. In video games we call that telegraphing. It's the game's way of saying they're about to hit you. You know, in real life, someone's probably going to swing a bit faster than that, so you don't have as much time to prepare yourself. But in video games, they're doing that on purpose, the developers, so that you can see when an attack's coming. So when you see someone winding up for an attack, you roll out of the way. Whoa! They changed their animation. Something started here. I need to roll out of the way. Whoa! Roll out. Whoa! Roll out of the way. Now, this works fairly well, although I'll note it does use a fair amount of stamina, and as you can see, if you mess up, you're going to get hit and take a lot of damage. No fun. Now, you do feel a lot more nimble this way, especially compared to using a sword and shield. Or I should say, more specifically, hiding behind a shield. But yeah, this works pretty good. Now, there's going to be some enemies, especially bosses, where they're going to hit so hard, your shield's basically not going to work. And I'll get more into that when we talk about stats. But rolling is kind of your only option in certain situations. So it's not bad to practice how that works, but if you're like me, it still feels a little bit on the risky side. I kind of like the protection of my shield, in this case a gigantic shield. So I'm going to look for an opening and attack when there is one. Don't you dare. Alright, so using magic is the easiest way to play. Right? Next most easy is going to be hiding behind a shield. Just waiting for an opening. The next most difficult is going to be rolling out of the way at just the right moment. And then the most difficult way to play requires you to not only notice when they're attacking and when you should attack, but exactly when they're going to hit you. You use that for parrying. So usually you just hide behind your shield like this, but if you push L2, you kind of do this move to hit their weapon out of the way. And if you get them right when they attack, then you do some super mega critical move that does a bunch of damage. And that's pretty hard to pull off. You have to know exactly when they're going to hit you. Frankly, I'm glad that I pulled it off just now for this recording. Let's see if I can do it again. No. Okay. I got hit. Alright, let's try again. Yeah, that guy's going nuts. Oh, messed it up again. See, it's pretty hard to do properly. And that's the main reason that I don't do it, is, man, the risk is just too high. I don't want to take a bunch of damage just because I mess up a thing. I've got a shield I can hide behind. Why bother? And this is pretty much my experience with trying to parry. Let me try one more time with this guy. Yep, there we go. So if you're really focused, you can pull it off. But that's pretty hard. Now, if you go online, a lot of people are going to try to make you feel like you're a baby or you stink at the game because it's really hard to parry. Whatever. I'm having fun playing my way. If you like parrying, go for it. But just because it's hard and you might struggle to do it, that's no less legitimate a way to play than to just hide the whole time. Or better yet, hide behind something like this. Yeah, that's what I would do if in real life if I was in a fight like this. I would hide as much as I can. I think that's an excellent way to play. Incidentally, that same pattern is about difficulty is how the developers have gone about making their games. The Souls games are about basically using your shield. Bloodborne doesn't have shields. It requires you to dodge out of the way. And then Sekiro is all about parrying. And those games, I would say, are kind of increasing in difficulty for those exact reasons. So before I get into stats and character builds, I just wanted to give you a couple examples of how magic doesn't work out too well, and maybe some other combat tricks. So if I try to use magic on this guy, ooh, what do you know? He's strong against magic, so that's going to make this tricky. You know what else doesn't work very well? Shields. He shoots this green thing and uses other magic that shields don't block. Okay. Ooh, glad I didn't get hit by that. Good luck if you do. So you might need to think of some other strategies. For example, you might consider the brave strategy of hiding behind corners and then attacking when the time is right. That's my preferred way of dealing with these guys. These mind flayers, they are pretty tough. I don't want them to drink my brain. Ooh, Was I quick enough? Getting around that corner? Looks like I was. So that's one way of dealing with guys like that. One of the other main combat considerations is backstabbing. There's kind of a sweet spot right behind an enemy where if you get there, it does this totally different animation. It does tons of damage. Works out pretty well, so you'll probably want to be circling around guys and try to get at their back. Now these guys are put here deliberately to remind you that you can do that. Maybe also to make you feel powerful before you head on in there. But if you get right behind an enemy, you can do a ton of damage, and you probably saw that happening earlier and in the other video. So one thing I wanted to mention before I jump too much into stats is just address something that I read about a lot online, which is people saying, basically, hey, what's the correct character build? What's the best character build? How should I do it? And if you want to do that, I think that's okay. You can play this game however you like, but I think you're kind of robbing yourself of a lot of fun when you do that. I think what's a lot more fun is to build the character any way you want. If you want to have a mage, have a mage. If you want to have a sword and shield soldier, go for it. If you want to do like a rogue that's quick on their feet and uses a bow, go for it. But then when you decide on that, you still go online and people are like, well, here's, like, when you're level 14, put your stat into strength. When you're level 15, put one into dexterity. And I think that if you follow a blueprint like that, you are missing out. I think the real fun is going, oh, what do I need right now? What do I want right now? Oh, I need a bit more strength to wield that sword. Oh, go ahead and put something in strength. You don't have to do what some stranger on the internet says about how you should level up. So what I want to do is just tell you how the stats work, what you can level up and what that does, and the rest of the stats of the game, and then you can decide for yourself. Here's what I want to do. I think you'll have a lot more fun that way. So after you defeat the first boss, you talk to this bald kid up at the top of the Nexus, and then you find the lady in black. And she is how you upgrade your stats. What you do is you cash in your souls, basically, to level up. You also use your souls to buy items, repair your items, things like that if you like. But if you pick Seek Soul Power, then it shows you, if you can see up at the top left, your soul level, how many souls you have, and souls required for the next level. Obviously, my level's really high, and it costs a lot of souls to level up. And then you pick these stats and decide what you want to do with all your souls. What should you do? Well, I'll try my best to explain. And as I said before, there's not really a wrong answer here. I want to point out that pretty much anything you put stats into, if you look at the top right, your defense is going to go up. So you don't really have to think about that as far as making your choice. It will always go up no matter what. So what does each one of these things do? So Vitality gives you more hit points. Oh, I could use more hit points. I can make more mistakes if I have more hit points. Excellent. It also increases your item burden. That's sort of a relic of old games. It's how many things you can carry on your person. The newer Souls games just let you carry as much as you want. The important part is how much you can be holding, like equipping, like how heavy is the sword and shield you want to hold. That's something different. That's your equip burden. Item burden is how big your inventory can be. So mostly if you're doing Vitality, it's going to be for the hit points. You would be bananas to get Vitality solely to increase your item burden. Intelligence, you can see at the bottom there, it says increases maximum magic points and magic memory. So you get more mana basically. How magic memory works, you can see in the bottom right, it says memory, magic memory, and miracle memory. It's essentially a way to equip spells. You might have learned 15 different spells, but you can actually only equip a few at a time. And how many magical memory slots you have is what manages that. Probably might want to consider that towards the start if you're going for a magic build, but intelligence is mostly going to be around increasing how much mana you have. Now endurance, as you can see, enhances stamina, equip burden, and some resistances. So it increases your bleed and poison resistances slightly. Okay, that's a nice perk. The main things you're probably going to be noticing is that it gives you more stamina and more equip burden. More stamina, hey, game's about stamina management, the more the better, right? You can block more, you can attack more, you can roll more before you run out. Great. That's a solid choice for putting stats into if you're planning on just normal sword and shield combat. Equip burden is another major consideration. The higher the equip burden, the more you can equip. And that can be slightly more complicated than it sounds. Say you want to wear some armor that weighs 56 pounds. I can't wear it right now, but I can now. Okay, that's great. But also how the game works is the speed of your rolling depends on how much stuff you're wearing. You can see that I can roll pretty quick right now. That's because my equip burden, where is that? Kind of in the middle, it says equip burden is less than 50%. So my max equip burden is 53. Half of that is what, like 26 and a half? So I'm below that. Since my equip burden is below half, I can roll quickly. Now if my equip burden was more than half, let's say I equip something a bit heavier, now you can see that it's 29 and a half. Okay, that's more than 50% of my max equip burden, so I'm gonna roll slow. That's the game's way of trying to indicate, well, yeah, if you're wearing and holding tons of stuff, you're not gonna be as nimble. So if you're playing this game and I was explaining to you rolling and you're like, whoa, my character doesn't roll that fast. It rolls slow like this. All right, well then it's probably due to your equip burden and you're over half full on that. So if you want to be able to roll fast, you can change what you're wielding, you can change what you're wearing, wear something lighter, and then you'll be quick on your feet again. Next up is strength and dexterity. Now they might work a little differently than you think. They work a little bit differently than in many RPGs. So strength isn't just like you're going to do more damage, but rather there are certain weapons that scale to strength, and I'll explain what that means in just a moment. But basically, for that weapon, the higher your strength, the more damage you will do. You can see in my case it says my left-handed weapon number 1 will go from doing 144 to 147 because of the stats I'm putting into strength. It's getting stronger because the weapon I'm using scales well with strength. Weapons that do better with strength tend to be normal swords, big heavy weapons, a big club, something like that. Dexterity is weapons that are a bit faster, a katana, a dagger, things like that. And if you put points into there, if the weapon scales with dexterity, it will get stronger. You can see my right weapon number 2, that's going to do a teensy bit more damage because I'm putting points into dexterity. Magic, it says raises magic power. You can see there at the bottom in the middle. It's sort of a generic number. I'm sure it goes into some algorithm, but basically it makes your spells do more damage. There's also some weapons that scale with magic. I'm using a weapon that scales with magic that does 358, can get up to 360. If I had really low magic stat, this weapon would do more like 250, but it's doing that much damage because I have so many points put into magic and it scales well with magic. Faith is pretty similar. It makes so your miracles are more effective if it's healing or if it's dealing damage. Magic and faith are pretty similar in those ways. Some weapons and items require faith or will scale well with faith. And last up is luck. This is still in the era of video games where luck was basically pointless. It's a bit more useful in some more modern games. I think it's pretty good in Fallout 4, for example. What luck does in this game is it increases your plague resistance. Okay, that's great. There's only maybe one place in the game with plague. But really what it does is it boosts your item discovery. So enemies are more likely to drop items. Okay, that's not bad. I don't know of any builds that do really good around this other than that there's one weapon that scales super good with luck, but most likely you're probably not going to put too many stats into there. So for the rest of the stat information, I'm going to go to a slightly different screen. It's a little convoluted in this game, to be honest. You push the options button, or what on the PS5 just has 3 horizontal lines. And you can pick what you've got here. This is what you have equipped. If you had a crossbow or a bow and arrow, that stuff goes here. You've got your rings. So if I pick a sword, or rather something I'm holding in my hands. In the bottom right, you can see if you push triangle, it'll switch what it shows you in that particular menu. And if you push square, it will change what it shows you in this larger subscreen. There's kind of three different screens. One is it's showing you the stats of that weapon. The next is it's got a little bit of extra information. I'm mostly interested in this screen. And you can have that screen open and then switch your weapons, which is pretty convenient for comparing them. So what you may want to do is pull up this menu, push square to look at the stats, then push triangle. Those stats aren't going to change, so push triangle again, and now you can see a lot of important information. So right now I've got this Crescent Falchion +5 equipped. What if I wanted to use the Uchi Katana? Well, I can see pretty easily what will change over there on the right. The katana weighs a bit more, so my equip burden is going up. You can see over there on the right in the middle, it goes from 24.5 to 28.3. And it's red saying that's worse. In the bottom right, it says attack power of right-hand weapon number 1. Right now it's doing 358. If I were to change to the Uchi Katana, it would go down to 105. Ooh, it's in red, meaning it's worse. So that's a kind of a quick reference there. So in this main screen in the middle, it has a ton of information. Some of it's kind of confusing. So it says Crescent Falchion +5 does slash damage. So there's three main types of damage: slash, bash, and pierce. Slashing is like a sword cutting across something, and that's pretty good against unarmored opponents. Like it would be good for cutting fleshy stuff. Bash is maybe something like a mace. It's good for crushing armor or monsters covered in armor. Or like a skeleton, it's good at crushing the bones. And pierce, it's not super clear, but it's kind of a bit of both. It also is good against armor. Some weapons kind of do both, like this dragon longsword. Its normal attack does slashing damage, and then its strong attack, its R2 attack, lunges forward and it does pierce damage. So you could go about the game equipping different kinds of damaging weapons and then switch depending on the enemy. I don't really do that. You could do that, but what I found is you'll probably just kind of find a weapon, make it good, and then just deal with the fact that certain enemies are more difficult. Maybe if you like using a slashing weapon, it's slightly more difficult to get at an enemy wearing lots of armor. But you could switch as the case arises. The next thing down that says attack power, that's pretty straightforward. Weapons do physical, magical, or fire attack. I'll explain that slightly more in a minute. Below that, additional effects. Those are things that this weapon does. That blood is bleeding, the bleeding effect. Over to the right with the skull is poison. And then to the right is plague. And then honestly, I don't remember what that last one is. Who cares? So they all work pretty similar, actually. When you do enough bleeding or poison or plague damage, it inflicts that status on an enemy, or if an enemy can do that to you. And they basically all drain your health a bit over time unless you use an item to heal it. Now, the attribute bonus is what I mean by weapon might scale. What that means is a weapon will work better or do more damage the more stats, the more points you have in the relevant stats. So that arm is strength, the hand is dexterity, that blue thing is magic, and then the star is faith. So this weapon has an A scale ranking with magic. The worst ranking is E, and then D, C, B, A, and then S is the highest. So the higher that letter, the more points you have in that stat, the stronger it is, the more damage it will do. So this dragon longsword doesn't scale with anything. It will always basically be that strong unless I upgrade it with stones. This Chris blade, it gets a bit better with strength, a teeny bit better with dexterity, quite a bit better if I have points in magic. Penetrating blade, a little bit with strength and dexterity. Now those scaling things can improve as well over time. That's why this one's level A. So you might go, okay, I really love this mace. It requires faith. It gets really strong if I could put points into faith. You could sort of start to focus your character around using that weapon and getting more faith. The attribute requirements is saying you have to have these stats to use this weapon. Now, you can technically equip a weapon if you don't have good enough stats, like this penetrating sword, and you'll get this warning that's like, hey, you don't have good enough stats, it's not going to be very good. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. Now, it should do a ton of damage, but it actually is only going to do 39. Why? I'm not strong enough or have enough dexterity to use this. So if I actually try to use it, it's like, it's going to be like kind of slow. It looks like it's actually not too bad in this case, but it does a lot less damage. So you can't just use whatever. You have to have the attribute requirements met. One other thing worth mentioning is that the game tries to break down what that scaling bonus is, by the way. So in this case, it says it does 112 physical attack plus 0. It's not getting anything extra from scaling. It does 119 magical attack. Oh, and it scales well with magic, and you have 50 points in magic. It's going to do an extra 128. So that weapon's doing a lot of extra damage because of that scaling bonus. This weapon would normally do 20 normal. I'm getting a slight bonus from strength and dexterity. It normally does 62 magic, and I'm getting a 47 points of damage bonus because of the magic. That's how that's breaking down. And the last thing I want to focus on with stats is how shields work. Whoops, just unequipped it. So actually, let's equip this one first. So it says in this main screen over there on the sort of in the middle towards the top on the right, durability, that's how long it'll last, weight, how heavy it is, and damage percent reduction. So what this means is how much damage reduction this shield does. So it will absorb, this shield will absorb 70% of physical damage. So if you run around with this shield, which is pretty bad, it's not even going to block all the damage. A guy hits you, you're still going to take 30% of that damage. Not very good. It blocks 30% of magical damage, just 10% of fire, and it has a guard break of 35. I'll explain that in a minute. Now, why might I use this dark silver shield? Well, wow, it blocks all physical damage coming in and all magical damage coming in. That's pretty sweet. If one of those mind flayers shoots a blue soul ray at me, this will just totally block it. There's some bosses that they use lots of magical attacks. This will block all of it. Excellent. It's the same reason you might want to carry around something like this large brushwood shield, although it's insanely heavy. It blocks 100% of fire damage. Pretty good. I like to use this steel shield, though, because it's got the standard 100% physical damage protection, but it also has excellent guard break. What guard break is it's how well this shield absorbs blows. So there's some algorithm, you can't tell what it is, but when an enemy hits your shield, it takes away a certain amount of stamina. Now, the higher the guard break, the less stamina will go away. So there's some enemies that hit you really, really hard, and they'll just make you recoil. All your stamina will run out. You'll still take damage, but that doesn't happen if you've got high enough stamina and a high enough guard break. This shield has a guard break of 82, which is insanely high, and it can block basically anything, including large bosses will hit it really hard, and you can block it. For my preferred playstyle, that's what I like. I like a shield with super high guard break. I like to be kind of nimble, and my sacrifice is I wear sort of light armor, so if I get hit, it still does a lot of damage, but I do a lot of hiding behind this huge shield with tons of guard break. I forgot to mention that in this game you actually cannot upgrade your armor, but you can upgrade your weapons and shields. You do that with these stones that you'll find. There's a character, old crotchety guy in the Nexus, who can upgrade your weapons and shields with stones. And slightly later in the game, you'll find another blacksmith who can do things even more interesting, like add magic or fire effects to your weapons and things like that. To do that, you need to get this elevator going. I'm pretty sure you'll figure out how to do that when you're about 2/3 of the way through this level. So you can, of course, design your character any way you like. You can't really screw this up. I mean, if you're playing tons of multiplayer, maybe you'll come across some player with super curated stats, but if you're playing single player and oh darn, I put 2 extra points into strength that I didn't mean to. Oh well, just put them in next 2 levels. You might need to go get a few souls, but that's not really a huge deal. Well, I recorded the voiceover for this video while I was playing. When I do that, I tend to forget things or stutter or explain things in a weird way. So if something doesn't make sense or if I just forgot to mention something, please feel free to leave a comment. My channel's not very big at all, so I probably will see your comment and get back to you. I hope you enjoy playing.